very, very warm welcome. And thank you all for joining us today. Because today I think we're talking about a very important subject. Sometimes I think I also just sweep it under the carpet. It's something that I told Fiona myself, I have two 4 year olds and I always am struggling. What do I say? Or should I even actually have this conversation with them? But, more and more, especially with sipping thoughts and as I've been talking to more people, this is one of the most important conversations that we need to have. But most of us, probably maybe from the generation we're coming, are not prepared. I feel confused or just sometimes shy. So, hopefully, in this session, I'm so glad we've got Fiona. She will help us think about this issue, think about how we can tackle this issue. But before we go ahead, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Sipping Thoughts, my baby. So it was co-founded by me and Meeta Gudgutia. It is a multimedia platform. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts. We wanted to create a no judgment platform and create a network of women for women, and of course, for the many men that have supported us. Sipping Thoughts reaches to about 2.5 million women on a monthly basis. We're available on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp, and of course, please do check out our website. You will see a lot of our programming there. You can see a lot of our webinars coming up. But today, what we are talking about is something I think that has been very close to the heart of Sipping Thoughts because awareness, education is one of the mantras in which we said, okay, we wanted to create this platform. And we're very fortunate to have very skilled people like Fiona that can talk to us and actually tell us about this subject. So, Fiona, I think a lot of you already know her. I know she needs no introduction, but I would like to tell a little few words about her. She serves as a director, a faculty, and a facilitator with the NGO Seeds of Awareness and Research Foundation, which is an organization that does comprehensive sexuality education with adolescents through experiential methodology, just enabling informed choices. It also trains and enables facilitators to create safe spaces and reduce the shame and stigma around sexuality by working on their own biases and judgments via a certificate course, which has been accredited by the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Fiona, of course, wears many hats. She's also the director of the NGO 17,000 Feet Foundation, which works towards transforming lives in rural villages of Ladakh, primarily via education. Her engagement involves setting up libraries and reading programs in the government schools of remote villages in the summers and imparts teachers training in the winters. Recently, she was invited by the government to start the first ever teaching training program in sex education in Ladakh. So, as you can see, I'm hoping that this message, the message that we are getting here, this message is actually going to travel far and wide within India. So, with that, I would like to welcome Fiona. Fiona, welcome to Sipping Thoughts. We're so happy to
Thank
have
you.
you with us.
Thank you so much for having me here. And congratulations on Sipping Thoughts. I think it's a fabulous platform.
Thank you
Um,
for that. So we would like to dive right in, Fiona. First, I want to ask you why this particular subject. I know you've been involved in a lot of charities, a lot of other work, but why sex education and why is this the passion project, I would say, for you?
well, I think it goes back to my childhood when I was always fascinated about biology and the human body. But I don't think I had it in me to study medicine. And I wanted to have something to do with the human body, but not, I think I didn't want to go in such detail. Sorry. It was actually in the United States when I was teaching. I was doing my doctorate, and that is the time when I had to teach a course in human physiology. And the most exciting and favorite chapter of mine was the human reproduction, right? And it just fascinated me that the body is so complex and it can do this really fabulous phenomenon, of perpetuating life. And yeah, and then I came back, had my kids, and then my kids started asking me questions. And I'm like, I I was always very open with them, and giving them the answers. I kept thinking, I said, I'm giving them the answers, but where are their peers getting their answers from? And that made me go to the head of school and ask them if they'd be interested, because this is something I used to teach. And Mrs. Nalini Pinto of Hillspring International, she was a fabulous visionary, and she said, "Of course, I mean, this is something, this is the need of the hour." And that's where it started. And then the number of questions that I got from that first batch just made me realize that there are, the kids are just floating around with so many cobwebs and questions in their minds, and nobody is answering them their questions. And I think that made the resolve even more. And I just loved interacting with kids, and then interacting with parents, and interacting with teachers, because they're all the stakeholders in the child's life. And I think, that's how it all started. And it's been a fabulous 11 years of talking about sex.
Which you say is one of the reasons we always have a packed session.
Well, let me tell you, sex sells. So you've got a packed session there. It's not me.
Well, with that, Fiona, I will turn it over to you, and let's get into the session.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all, whoever has logged in. Thank you so much for being here. I have a lot of information to give you and a little time, unfortunately. But I'm sure in this webinar today, we have a cross section of people who are parents of kids of various age groups, expectant women, educators, or people who are just interested in learning more, right? So I'm going to try and keep this as general as possible, and maybe any specific questions can be asked in the Q&A section, okay? So, Mummy, where did I come from? Why are boys and girls different down there? What's an orgasm? When is it okay to kiss my boyfriend? And why do I have to wait for marriage to have sex? I'm sure these are questions that you have come across, or you yourself have asked when growing up. Or a situation where you think that, oh God, my kid just doesn't want to talk about sex, runs away every time I start a conversation because they're so embarrassed. Or they say, I know it all, don't talk to me. Some of us also say, I don't know what to say when they ask me a question. So these are situations we've all been in, right? So is it really easy to talk about these topics and field such questions? Of course it is. We have to make it fun, right? We're not talking about death here. So you have to change your attitude. And as with anything that looks easy, okay, comes a lot of hard work. And who does the hard work? You. You have to work on yourself first before we can think of helping our kids, okay? So let me tell you on the onset that there is no magical formula. But I intend to guide you how to make this process really easy to talk about, because it is a wonderful phenomenon, okay? And we need to celebrate it. So I'm just going to give you a small outline of what I am going to talk about today, okay? And let me just show that to you. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Okay, great. Okay, so let's see what this big brouhaha about sex is all about, okay? Let's examine the word and see why it is so taboo to talk about it. And maybe that will make you understand yourself a little better and why you are not talking about it, okay? Then let's focus also on the importance of talking to kids about it, okay? Or talking among ourselves, okay? And hopefully when you keep all these important points in mind, all these inhibitions that you have, I'm hoping that that will melt away, okay? And lastly, we will talk about, how do you actually go about talking about sex, okay? So before we start, we get into it, let me just run a quick poll, and please help me with this poll. Be as honest as possible, because that will just help us in the discussion and the conversation, yeah? So it's a very easy poll. You just have to say yes or no. Parents are the best people to start talking about sex and sexuality to their kids? Can you all see the poll? Okay.
I've just launched it.
Oh, thank you.
We're seeing a lot of yeses, nos. A lot of stuff is also coming in the chat box.
Okay, great.
Please also do vote on the poll. That'll be great to get your response there also.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give another 5 seconds and then I will end the poll. And Fiona, do you want me to share the results?
Yeah, we can share the results. Wow. Okay, so sorry. So 89% say yes, they agree, and 15 say no. Well, let me tell you that you have taken the first step in talking about sex, okay? Yes, of course, parents are the best people to talk to their kids about sex and sexuality, yeah? We are all sexual beings, and more so we are, relational beings, right? The first relationship that a child develops is with a parent, okay? And the child learns to communicate with the parent on all topics, including sex, yeah? We as a parent will bend backwards to give our kids everything. We will bend backwards to give them a great academic career. Best schools, best classes, best tuitions. But unfortunately, we leave our kids to figure this part of their lives by themselves. We rather outsource it, okay? And this is where they need the most hand holding. So I'm going to ask you a question. What does sex mean to you? And please feel free to write your answers in the chat box. It'll be great to see them. And Suki, if there's anything interesting, please let me know.
Yes, no, I'm waiting to hear all the answers.
Okay. So while you're typing that, let me tell you that, sex at different phases in our lives wear different hats. And you will agree with me that when we're young kids, it's curiosity. As adolescents, it's curiosity, experimentation, peer pressure, or just blurred boundaries, yeah? Young adults, well, it becomes pleasurable at that point of time. They're searching for love or a sense of power or just fulfilling fantasy, yeah? In older adults, you see that it continues to be pleasurable, but it can also be a sense of power, obligation, duty. Sometimes it gets abusive. And most husbands above 50 today are constantly crying that they don't see any of it. But we love it. We are afraid of it. We loathe it. But we are curious to know about it. Yeah, that's why you all are here today also. So let's explore the origins of this word sex and familiarize ourselves with a few terms, okay?
So I like some of the answers. Sex is imagination,
Okay.
which is, yeah, very nice. Expression of love when it comes to feelings. Tanya says important and a normal part of life. Neeta says the intercourse between either male or female or otherwise. Emotional. Shubha says private and connection. Lydia is saying physical bonding of two individuals. Aditi, a beautiful way of expressing love. Bhavna, the physiological and emotional act of melding of two individuals involving pleasure. Purva says difference, expression, and pleasure. Megha, definitely only a tool of reproduction, but it makes two souls one. Seema, no interest. No interest. Okay. Samida, expression of love. Janak, it's a beautiful, personal, private emotion, intimate. So lots of interesting answers.
Lovely, lovely. And, with all these answers, maybe they can also run a talk like mine because they're all giving the right answers, right? So let's look at the origins of the word sex. Okay, it comes from a Latin word, sexus, which has its origin in the word seko, which means a cut or a division. Division in what? A division in the human species into male and female, depending on the physical and genetic aspects that you were born with. Okay, and that is what the doctor will assign to you. It assigns your sex at birth. And we often mix this word up and loosely interchange it with the word gender. Okay, sex refers to the biological attributes in humans, whereas gender refers to the socially constructed roles, the behaviors, expressions, identities of girls, boys, men, women, gender diverse people. Okay. What have we done with the word sex? We've taken this word that means division and we've changed it from a noun into a verb to describe the act of sexual intercourse. And what is sexual intercourse? Is exactly as what you all have described. It's coming together. It's coming together of two people who have different sex cells. One has to be male, one has to be female. So you have to have a sperm and an egg for the purpose of perpetuating life. It's as simple as that. Or is it? Well, pause for a moment, okay, and just think back to what your introduction to sex was like. Did you get all your your questions answered? So let's run another poll right now. Where did you get your sex information from? Okay. Let's wait for that.
Another 5 seconds.
And please be as honest as possible. These are anonymous answers that are coming in here.
And I've just shared the results.
Okay. All right. So this is really interesting because, the percentages are changing over time and changing for the better. Okay. When I first started, porn and media, magazines, etc., were the highest, and parents were the lowest. Yeah. So this is very interesting. Thank you for that poll. Okay. So as you can see, a lot of us really did not get our information from our parents, okay? And a lot of parents and kids have shared with me that their exposure to sex ed was just filled with awkward moments with parents, teachers, just forget the parents, the teachers. When the chapter of, reproduction came, they would just skim over it or they would just be absent that day. And this is a chapter that they were really looking forward to, and that also went, unfulfilled kind of thing. So for many of us, this three-letter word, small three-letter word sex, even in its simplicity of meaning division in the human species, or the act which is meant to perpetuate our species, just makes us very uncomfortable. Okay, so let's try and examine why. What, according to you, makes talking about sex so taboo? Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be, right? So that's what we're here for today, right? To just put down a few points, and you may have a lot more points. These are a few things
So
that
I wrote, because we were told not to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. So
the shame story,
and made to feel dirty. Seema is saying no clothes. Sonia is saying, when I'm in Canada or the US, oh wow, now they're coming in so fast, I can't keep forget it. Shubha, lots of hushy. See, Swen says embarrassed. Kiran says adults verbally and non-verbally don't accept it. Joan, June says made to feel ashamed. Santosh, apparently it was a marriage thing. Ananya viewed
Right.
it as a lustful act that is only supposed to happen behind the privacy of the room. Sandhya, not comfortable. Bhavna, age difference and how do you communicate in the right vocabulary to children? Past habit, that's my upbringing. It's also been a taboo, says Vinay. Sukriti says, I always wanted to talk freely about it, but I can't find anyone to talk about it to. Janak, we're afraid that it may pre expose kids' minds to thoughts while they should be enjoying their childhood. Dr. Vandana says, not comfortable. Pavan Kumar, shameful. Lydia, not comfortable. Shailendra was treated as a secret topic. So we're getting a lot of this no lights, dark. Sex is a
Yeah,
secret.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Everyone putting in their reasons as to why it was taboo. Uh, a lot depends on how you were introduced to that topic, right? And your experiences and your exposure will then portray your behavior towards the topic, right? So when I say sex, also the first thing that jumps to your mind is definitely the act of sexual intercourse, right? And as you all have said, it has been shamed. We've been conditioned that it is something of shame. The naked body is shameful. We it's been stigmatized, and it's so deeply ingrained in us that we've normalized it. And the way that we deal with it is through embarrassment, right? It starts with body language, sending subliminal messages right from birth to our children. Yeah, you'll be surprised. A baby whose diaper is being changed, their hands are going everywhere, and they happen to touch either the penis or the vulva. And what do? We say, "Chi, ganda, take it out from there, take it out from there," before the poor child even knows what that organ is for, right? We use pet names as slang names for reproductive organs. Why? We don't name any other parts of our body with pet names. Okay. A parent or an elder will cringe or feel awkward if they're asked a question, or they'll play ping pong with the poor child, saying, "Go ask daddy, go ask mommy, go ask so and so, go on." So then the child gets the message that, oh, this topic cannot be spoken about, or there is something about this topic which everybody has to keep mum about, right? And the cycle continues. So it comes down from generation to generation. A lot of us also have baggage, right? There've been some negative experiences we've been through which we haven't resolved. And we need to resolve that before we can even talk to anybody else about it. So if you haven't done that, I'd implore you to please look for help. There's nothing shameful about that. Yeah. A lot of us are also afraid, right? We're afraid to talk about it among ourselves, of course, as to what will the other person think about me. But when we're talking to children, we're constantly thinking, oh my God, this is going to be the end of their childhood. Or oh, will I get it wrong? What will the child think of me? Are they going to visualize me having sex? Um, or is this a ticket for them to go out and try it? But on the contrary, you will be surprised that that's the last thing you need to worry about. Another point that has really played a huge role in this taboo is society, culture, and religion, which are all very entwined with each other, right? Gender is something that society has created. And through those eyes, we are made to see it only in one form, the binary, right? That is normal, male and female. Everything else is abnormal and hush. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on that, kids or people cannot talk about only because they're going to be shunned, right? They're going to be ostracized. Also, in a large part, we belong to a patriarchal society. And gender socialization and conditioning is in your face, including gender roles, right? It's become part of our DNA, and we don't even stop to question it. Culture started actually with a lot of good practices, okay, which somewhere down the line got distorted or it got dragged into religious practices. And that doesn't make sense with the biology of our existence. Culture doesn't allow us to talk about menstruation. Instead, it makes the poor girl feel impure or dirty, alienated, or the biggest thing is uninformed. Let me share with you a story of a teacher in Ladakh who implored me to please come and teach sex education in her school, because she said the way I was introduced to sex, to getting my period, was horrible, because my mother wouldn't talk about it. I dare not go and ask my mother. Asked my sister, and my sister kept on giving me bits and pieces. So, and in the meantime, I'm thinking I'm dying, and I didn't know what to do about it. And it just kept on happening every month. So I really thought I was dying. And then after a year, some girl told me that, okay, it happens, and didn't even tell me for how long it's going to last. But she says that wasn't really the scary part. She said, when I started getting hair under my underarms and in my pubic area, she said, I thought I was becoming a man. I mean, just look at the trauma that poor child had to go through. Why? Only because nobody is talking about it. Nobody's talking about all these changes that are going to happen, right? So the child is just taken by so much of surprise and shock. And guys, on the other hand, we don't talk to guys either, right? They have no clue what's happening to girls. Boys grow up, they don't know what's happening to themselves a lot of times. And they grow up being insensitive to girls and what they go through, only because we haven't spoken to them. And they really want to know. In all my classes, it's amazing to see how the boys are with wide eyes, wanting to know what this taboo thing is happening with the girls, which they are not told about. I give them pads, I give them sanitary tampons, I give them menstrual cups to hold. And I tell them, look at this, feel it, because this is something you're never going to wear. But you should know what a girl goes through for 7 days in a month, every month, for nearly 35 years. Okay. And that I must say has brought a lot of sensitivity. And the teachers shared that with me, that the boys have become more protective about the girls. Of course, a little teasing happened initially, but then they have become sensitive, right? So how do you think the world would be if men menstruated? How do you think society and culture would have handled it? It's just a question for you to think about. Yeah. So we fill our minds with the beliefs and the perspectives that have come down through the ages, and we're just scared to break that mindset. Why? Because we feel we're more answerable to society rather than ourselves. A classic example is that of child sexual abuse, where reporting is in dismal numbers. Why? Because the children have been silenced. No one has ever taught them about their bodies, how to love their bodies, how to respect them, right? What boundaries are, and how to report if they've been violated. And the fact that it is not their fault, and that they will be supported. Okay? So be mindful of all these factors which we have normalized. Yeah, and I'm sure you know about all this. And but we have normalized it. And let's hope that this will help us understand the importance of talking about it. Okay. A song comes to mind, actually. Bees do it, birds do it, even educated fleas do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. In Spain, the best opposites do it. Lithuanians, and let's do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. So, the lyrics of this song actually tell you that sex is so universal. It's a natural phenomenon in all living things. So the only way to normalize it is to talk about it, like everything else and any other topic that we would talk about. Okay. So when we talk about sex, really, it is not only about an act. Okay. We're not only talking about that verb. It's much, much more. It comes under the umbrella of sexuality. We are born with our sexes, as I said before. And as we grow, our gender takes shape and sexuality develops and evolves. Okay? So it's about understanding our bodies, its differences, being comfortable with our bodies, our feelings, our choices. So if we really want to talk about sex among ourselves and to kids too, what we really want to talk to and what we want to talk about is sexuality education. Okay. And what does sexuality education entail. Okay, just give me a second. Yeah. So
Your
sexuality.
notepad is also open on top, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, great. Is that
Sorry. What's open?
uh, okay? We're seeing your slides, and I think there's also the notes.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Sorry.
No worries. We can see your
Let's
cheat sheet also.
just all. Yeah, just give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing that. And where is she? Yes.
So I think some of the answers, if
Oh, okay.
men were menstruating, are
Yeah.
really, really interesting. So we will definitely go through those too.
Okay. All right. So talking about sexuality, just come back to this. Sexuality education is about sexual anatomy, sexual reproduction, sexual pleasure, activity, health, emotional relationships, reproductive health, outcomes of sexual activities, uh, sexual responsibilities, boundaries, respect and consent, resilience. Uh, these are things that, there are a lot involved in talking about sex. So sex is not just about the act, right? So as adults, we have basically gone through a lot of this, okay, a lot that comes under the sexuality umbrella, and we know what its positives and negatives are. So as elders and parents, what do we want to do? We want to protect our children from the negatives, right? And we speak in that lens. We tend to only concentrate on the negatives. And somehow we drown the positives and focus on telling children what they should not do rather than basically, telling them they need to love themselves first. And Lyle Stone puts it really beautifully. She's a sex educator in Australia, and she says we need to create pleasure stories for our kids and not shame stories. So, teaching them the facts and helping them navigate through this complex matrix that we have seen that involves sexuality, we are then preparing them to emerge as confident, responsible sexual beings who are then empowered with the ability to make informed choices when they need to. Okay. And when will they be able to make these informed choices? Only if they understand their choice making process and the factors that affect it. So we've got to teach them to be mindful of knowledge versus conditioning. And that is what sexuality education will do. So it's not only talking about the act. Okay. So if we look at why it is really important to talk to kids about sex, okay, I've enlisted a few points which I think are really important. And it starts with, it's safety, basically knowledge surrounding sexuality, uh, empower to empower them with a lot of uh, abilities. We've got to look at our world today, what they are absolutely surrounded by. Uh, their curiosity, okay, and what messages are we giving them? So let's start first with safety, okay. It's very important that we keep ourselves safe, especially our bodies safe at any age. The younger we learn to keep it safe, the better we can navigate through, any issue that life presents us. And later on, it could be abuse, or it could be sexually transmitted infection. Also, kids need to know that they have a safe space, a non-judgmental space where they can come and talk to you about anything. Why? Because you first listen, and only after you listen, you respond. So you don't react. And believe me, this is the key to having kids come and talk to you and telling you anything. I see somebody saying that trust is very important, and I totally agree. And they'll only trust you when you create that safe space. right? Um, Knowledge. With knowledge comes a lot of acceptance of self, right? Body image and self-esteem, and also responsible behavior. Please don't worry that you're going to give them this information and they're going to run off and try it just after they speak to you. They're not going to go berserk. Okay, they have to understand, and we all have to understand that with knowledge, you know that you are unique and you need to love that about yourself. So don't constantly compare. And that really drives us absolutely nuts. Constantly comparing ourselves and wanting to be and striving to be and looking like somebody else, right? We need to teach kids and also ourselves the correct body names, right? No pet names for these for our reproductive system or our organs, because please remember, sex offenders, they stay away from kids who know their body parts. Why? Because they know that these kids may have an open relationship and the probability of them then reporting is much higher. We need to talk about what parts are private and what is public and why, how our bodies work, why changes are happening, and changes are happening much before it happens. Just like I told you, the example of the Ladakhi teacher, right? Uh, we don't want that trauma to set in for the child. We need to respect our bodies and others' bodies too. They need to know that. We need to know how relationships work, how what is okay, what is not okay, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Pleasure. We never talk about pleasure that sex brings, okay? That it's not only for reproduction, that it plays a very important part of our lives, yeah? It is also so important to empower our kids and to teach them at a very, very young age to express any emotion that they are experiencing, right? Be it happiness, be it sorrow, pain, anger, pleasure, okay, frustration. This leads them to be clear about what those emotions feel like, sound like, or even look like. Yeah. And why is this important? Because when they grow older and they get into relationships, okay, and especially in their sexual relationships, they will know how to express their wants, their needs, and their desires, right? Or even their limits. So it's very important to empower kids to show and express their feelings. Yeah. Also, the ability to say, I don't like it, or the ability to say no, and no means no, or just the ability to say, I'm happy. Oh, I love that touch. It's just so cozy, right? Or consent to be hugged and kissed. Do you remember in your childhood how your parents have just pushed you to go and wish people and be hugged and kissed by them? And there are some people that you instinctively, you do not like. Forget as kids, even as adults. There are some people, they're not bad people, but there's an instinct that we just don't want to have any, very close contact with them. And we don't give the kids a choice, right? So we need to teach them that kind of consent too. We need to make them trust themselves and trust their instincts, because that will help them later on. Okay, let's not only look at what they are right now. We are training them for the latter years of their life also, right? We need to empower them with the ability to know boundaries, which is extremely important, um, especially for young teenagers. Yeah. Um, I'll give you an example of my son. He just reminded me about this a few weeks ago, and we were on a trip to Ladakh, a road trip to Ladakh. We were in Amritsar. We had reached there, and the kids got into a fight. My daughter was 19, and my son was 17, but he was a very strapping, tall guy. And they got into a fight, and she hit him, and he hit her back. But the way that he hit her, she was nearly flung across the room. And that's where my husband and I stepped in and said, this is unacceptable. You cannot, wield this kind of power over them. It was not an equal retaliation. And he was so mad at us. because he says, she hit me, I hit her. So it was tit for tat. But at that point of time, he couldn't see how he had crossed the boundary, right? And so I said, how did you process it? How did you deal with it? And he said, well, I went on my gap year and far away from y'all. But on his gap year, he said he thought about it and he realized how right we were. And he says that has stuck with me for the longest time and forever, I think, because he says now, even where my interactions with women or girls are concerned, I am so careful about my boundaries. So there are some things that we may tell them when they're very young, but it actually resonates with them much later. Okay, so don't think that you have to see results immediately. Um, when we empower kids, we're not only empowering them, but we're also empowering ourselves. And it's a lovely imprint that we are leaving behind for our kids. It's a powerful imprint, yeah, of empowering them. Let's cut to the current world that we're in. It's presented to children and to all of us through technology and media, and it exposes us to a highly sexualized world. It has become very accessible, right? And that's a major concern for everyone, including most so for parents. The internet is here to stay. Let's accept that. It is the most inviting platform to make our kids want to engage in and experience sexual behaviors, but at a much younger age, right? And COVID has not made it any easier with the amount of screen time that has been legitimized. So pornography is a big draw, a big sexual educator, and we need to keep it real for us and for them too, for the kids, okay? And because they're surrounded by all this information that is being bombarded to them at all times, they are even more curious and they're constantly asking, but why, but why, but why? And sometimes we get irritated and say, oh gosh, when will they get over this period of asking why? But I don't think we should ever let them get over that period, because if we don't answer that question, that we don't answer what they want to know, we are leading them straight to improper channels of information, for example, porn sites. Yeah. So their curiosity actually leads them to understanding how their bodies work and how to respect them and how to take care of them well. Let me just give you a peek into the questions that I'm asked by fourth and fifth graders. I maintain an anonymous box where they can put any questions they want, okay, and we answer all those questions. So this is what I get. Of course, how do I come into your stomach? They don't ask me, but they ask a lot of that to their parents. But what really stood out for me is they asked what flavored condoms are without even asking me what a condom is. Yeah, they hear certain words, for example, ejection, where actually they must have heard ejaculation, but they haven't got the whole word, and so they come to ask you that question, and you explain it to them, and you kind of clarify it for them. Or interjection, which was intercourse. Yeah. Circumcision, porn. Fourth grader came and told me, asked me about porn, right? And it was a little shocking for me, but of course, very, very plain poker face, saying, yeah, come on, let's talk about where you got this information from, and how did you hear of this word, etc. So I'll come to that a little later. But what I want to tell you here is accurate information at any age from the right source is the most important to their minds, which are constantly brimming with questions. Okay, and it could be for adults too, because a lot of adults have not been spoken to about so many issues. Okay. Okay. What is the last messaging that the last point is, messaging. The foundation of sexuality and how it develops and evolves actually starts with you. Action speaks louder than words, and this cannot be a truer phrase right here. You know, kids look at parents and elders as their role models. You are their first teachers. They, they're watching you. They learn from you even before they can speak. They're absorbing all your actions. And I always say it's through diffusion. Uh, how you feel about your body, oh, I'm fat, I'm thin, I need to go on a diet, I need to go to the gym, etc. But they're taking all that all for, and they're giving importance to it all for the wrong reasons, right? uh, then we're not talking to them about loving who they are, and that giving, being grateful that they are healthy, right? And then the internet is there, the loudest voice that they can hear, which makes them shame their bodies. So uh, a lot of how they are, and they how their world um, progresses in their minds starts from how we behave and the examples we give. We don't really have to speak. The values they develop come from watching you at all times. How you're talking to your husband, how you're talking to your parents, right? Or how you're talking to your partner, how you maintain healthy boundaries in relationships, where no means no, or consent in relationships. They're watching at all times. So more emphasis on what you do rather than what you say, because they remember things, and they will remind you much later on when they're adults about what they remember you doing and how they watched you doing that, right? So let's keep in mind these points of safety, knowledge, and empower kids to impress upon themselves feelings of emotions so that they can express it, and be conscious of what the world around them is feeding them with information, and therefore of course their curiosity is heightened. And most important, we teach by example. Okay, so talking about sex, open conversations about sex and sexuality are just as important as food, shelter, and loving care. Let's get real here. When you signed up to become a parent or somebody who is looking after children or need to talk to children, you also signed up to talk to them about sex and sexuality. Okay, it's one of the topics which are included in everything else that you talk to them about. And the key is, this is key, if we start having open conversations when the kids are very young, conversations around sex and sexuality are just normalized by the time the child is a teenager. And eventually, it leads to addressing and sharing every sexual topic there is with such ease for the child and the parent. So please note that this is not a one-time conversation of, I need to have the talk. It is multiple conversations. And I cannot stress more about the positives that these multiple conversations have. And I speak from experience of 2 kids who I'm very proud of. And I think it has stemmed from the fact that my husband and I always spoke to them very openly and had many conversations with them. Is it going to be easy talking to kids about sex? Well, Kate Moyle puts it beautifully. She says, she's also a sex educator, and she says, talking about sex is like trying to have a conversation in a language that we have never been taught. And I'm sure it's true for so many of us, right? So when we get out of our comfort zone, anything that looks like an uphill task, okay, becomes even higher, right? And we pretty much, I think it's pretty much what I felt when I had to teach my entire module of sex education to children who had to speak, who only spoke Hindi. And I am not very good at Hindi, but I took it up as a challenge because why? I looked at the bigger picture. I saw how many more children I would be able to talk to, and therefore took the plunge. And believe me, when you take that plunge looking at the bigger picture, the water doesn't seem that cold, nor does it seem that deep. So it's not that difficult, okay? So here are some tips to help you. uh, talk about sex and sexuality. You cannot separate the two. Okay. Uh, a lot of it, let me tell you, I learned along the way. So it's not something that I'm coming from this, I always knew about it. It's something that I learned, and I learned from peers, and I learned from dealing with my own kids and other kids, etc. Keep your kid in the center, not yourself. Okay. It is key to understand what is important for them. Know for yourself, and let it be known to your kid that you are their friend, but you are also their parent first. And you are responsible for helping them develop into a good human being in all respects. Okay. So accept that first there are going to be a lot, there may be a few, roadblocks here and there, but cross that bridge when it comes. Don't anticipate it and therefore say, I'm not going to talk. Hmm? But some people it comes open and it's easy, but some people it's not, and it's understandably so. So cut yourself some slack. You're doing this for the first time. Nobody says that you're perfect. If you're a parent, you don't have to know everything, right? But the key is also to be real, and maybe admit also to the child, or admit to whoever you're having a conversation with, that this is my first time. I'm also a little uncomfortable about it, but nobody spoke to me about it, and I don't want that to happen to you. And therefore, I think it is important that we sit down and chat about, different things. Also, do remember that you are not responsible for the outcome. Everyone is born with the ability to make choices. Okay, they're free to make their own choices. You are there to guide them to make the correct choices for themselves. And guess what? They actually will. Your body language will create that safe space for them. Okay, uh, for them to come, because your body language will also tell them that I welcome your question. Okay, kids are great readers of body language. Okay, and they know when you are uncomfortable about a topic, when you're not comfortable a topic, when you're tensing up, etc. They just can read it. And when we create this safe space, this welcoming space, it has to be a non-judgmental space. And I'll say this again and again and again, because this is why kids do not talk to parents, because they're constantly afraid of being judged. Yeah. So don't react, listen. Okay. And believe me, they will share everything with you till the point where you have to say, okay, I don't need to know details. Yeah. Uh, and you want them to come to you, when it matters, to share things with you when it matters. Okay, when they're going through an abusive relationship, or confused about their identity, or if they're heartbroken, or if they've got some sort of infection, right? You can't solve all their problems. Yeah, but you can be their sounding board. And very often they come up, they'll come up with their own solutions. Yeah. Now, what helps in body language? There are two things that help in body language. That's the breath. Pause, do yourself a favor and breathe. So because when you breathe, you could pause. And when you pause, two things happen. One is that you get over the shock of the question that, a child or somebody has asked you. And the second thing is that you also have time to think of what you're going to talk and what you're going to say. Yeah. Also, be a good actor. If you've never got a chance to be on stage, this is your moment. When you have jaw-dropping questions come to you, poker face, absolutely. So you don't really show what emotions you're going through inside, but rather you ask them where they're getting this information from. Another tip is use correct terminology for body parts, because they can tell you when they're being violated. And are they going to giggle and laugh? Of course they are. And you're going to tell them, why are you laughing and giggling? This is just like any other part of our body, right? We don't giggle and laugh when you're talking about our hands and our nose and our head, right? Also, avoid giving them excessive information, right? So ask them the source of the question. That's extremely important. But never avoid answering. Keep it short, keep it simple. If you are afraid that you've given too much information, don't worry about it. They will disconnect. They will take what they want and they will run off, right? Or they will come back again and ask you something more. You may not have all the answers, but I think, you know what? you have to ask them for time if you don't know the answers. Please don't give them false answers, yeah, because sometimes they're just trying to test you. They've heard it from somewhere, they've listened about it from somewhere, and then they just come to see how embarrassed you're going to be about talking, and sometimes they're just testing. Another thing that, refrain from doing is scolding, punishing, or penalizing for sexual questions or just self-exploration, yeah, because they're never going to share anything with you, and you'll never be able to have an open conversation with them. So if you don't know much about the subject, equip yourself, um, practice, practice till you're comfortable, okay, with it. There is no, nobody is supposed to know everything, right? And when you are doing this for your child, and you're doing it for somebody who you care about a lot, you want to make sure that you are comfortable with it yourself, yeah. Share your experiences. Kids love to hear stories, and they love to know what you went through at the same age. They don't feel alone that they're going through it alone, right? So it's also important to remember that as kids grow into puberty, they start getting very secretive. We also were secretive. We never told our parents everything, right? And you would be dying to know, what they're talking about with their friends and who they're dating, etc. But if they will come and tell you, they will come and tell you in time, okay, if they have this open relationship with you. But a lot of time they don't do it. Why do they become secretive? It's just, as I said before, the fear of judgment and being teased, yeah. Also, another tip is make use of teachable moments when you talk to your kids. Short conversations, something that you've seen on TV or movies, or, while bathing, different parts of the body. You may see a pregnant woman and a conversation starts up from that. Any ad that you're watching that, kind of objectifies a woman. Sometimes when they're watching a movie, they're covering their eyes at a kissing scene. And you're like, why are you covering your eyes? And then, oh, they're kissing and all that. And you say, but what's so wrong about that? It's a lovely emotion to show each other that you love each other, right? So, try to make it very matter of fact and to normalize conversations, okay? A good practice would be also, sometimes kids are a little shy. We are shy. So the best thing to do is maintain a small box at home and tell them, just, put in all your questions there. I may not be there next to you when the question comes to mind, and you may forget it later on. So just write it down, put it there, and do a family time where you can sit across the table and, field all those questions, right? Also seek help from peers, from sex educators, from books, and from websites. Suki, I'd be really
Yes, I've shared it. I'll
yeah,
share
if you
it
can
again.
share the links, yeah, because these are lovely, fabulous links which make it so easy to talk about, sex, and just like a story. Uh, and avoid doing all the talking like I am doing just now. Let them be part of the conversation. Ask them if their questions were answered. Ask them what they think about certain things. Ask them their opinion. Yeah, it may take time and patience and perseverance, but just hang on there and just strive to go ahead and do it. So here comes, let's talk a little more about how much to tell children. Well, it definitely depends on age. uh, what is the source of the question? You don't want to tell them too much, okay? And you want to make it age appropriate also. You also want to gauge their maturity levels, right? Some kids are very curious and they want to know more. And you feel, your kid the best, and you know that they are ready for that information. So give it to them. Don't go according to what their peers know, okay? If they're ready for it, give it to them. Also, a lot of times, because you've had these previous conversations with them, whatever they're asking now, those previous conversations serve as a springboard for you to have that conversation, right? Uh, Also, check on your comfort levels. So, how much you tell them, how much are you comfortable talking about? How much is your knowledge on that topic? Okay, are there any values that you can share with them? Okay, and what do you want to share, and how much do you want to share about your personal experiences and how you went through? I remember I used to add in a few white lies because I just felt that it helped my kids uh, understand they were not alone, and the fact that their mother went through the same thing and it wasn't something to be so scared or traumatized about. Yeah. So when I say chat with them, you find a way to make it exciting. As I said before, we're not talking about death here. We're talking about something really exciting. Okay, we shouldn't make it a lecture. You can make it a story. Okay, like I did for my daughter when she was 10 years old. We sat on the bed and we opened this big book and we started looking at the pictures, and we had this whole lovely chat. And she loved it, and she still remembers it so fondly. She was only 10, and right now she tells me, Mom, please leave that book for me in your will, because it has such fond memories for me, right? So a way in which we can also attempt this is by actually starting conversations with the human life cycle. And I'll just show you this so that it's an idea for you. Okay, can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay. So all living creatures, right, including us humans, we exist on this planet. And why do we exist? Because we've got this magical ability of being able to make more of ourselves. Yeah. And through this process, which we call reproduction, yeah, uh, which is a very natural, pleasurable, instinctive process, okay, we can get more of ourselves. And why is that important? Because if we didn't get more of ourselves, what would happen? Our species would get extinct. Yeah. So it is very important for us to go through this life cycle. And what entails the life cycle? We are born, okay, we grow, and when we're born with all our organs, including our reproductive organs, the organs that are going to help us make more of ourselves, but they're all asleep. And it's only at the age of 10 that they start waking up. And when they wake up, they have to mature. Okay, they have to become strong. And when they become strong, only then they can produce those cells of, a sperm and an egg that will then give rise to a new human being. Okay, and this time of maturation is when the body is getting strong. Okay, you can kind of give the analogy of a baby who is born with legs but cannot walk. Why? It takes him 9 months to a year for the baby to start walking. Why? Because the legs do not have the strength to hold the baby's weight, and it takes that long for the baby to develop that. In the same way, it takes about 10 years for our bodies to mature so that we can actually produce new human beings. Yeah. And we don't live forever. We die at some point of time, but we've left behind the next generation. Yeah. And this is a lovely slide that I love to show for the passage of life. Okay. Sex is fundamental to our existence. We pass life on from one generation to the other because we can do it. Okay. Okay.
Wow, that was amazing.
Yeah, so it's simple, right? So I mean,
It is simple. I think a lot of questions though have come in, and I'll try to summarize it because I know we are running out of time.
okay.
What age do you start? Do
Well,
you wait till the questions come to you, or do you start giving the asking?
well, it all depends, really, because when you're talking about your body, you're talking about body parts, right? When the kid is having a bath, etc., and you're telling them what are private and public, it starts as young as the age of 2 and 3. So you start with that. Can I just share this slide with you, and maybe you'll be able to understand then that better. Yeah. Okay, so you start with the correct body parts, private versus public. You talk to them about expressing emotions because you're preparing them to be able to tell you what they're feeling, and for their later years when they get into relationships. Good touch, bad touch, right? You're going to talk to them about what is comfortable, what is uncomfortable. Because a bad touch can also be a whack is a bad touch. But what do I feel? So that's why expressing emotions is so important, because then they know what is comfortable versus uncomfortable. What are secrets? and they need to have kids. They need to have people, trusted adults, who they can go and talk to. So these are vital to start talking to the kids. You're not going to talk about physiology, etc. Talk about biology of the body in general. Yeah. So you can start as young as 2 and 3 and make them conscious of all these points that I've just said. Is there any other? Let me just stop sharing that.
Yes, there are some questions I think that has come in I think, how do you actually tell them? I know you showed us the circle of life, but we are getting a question from Radha. Would you actually say how babies are created?
Okay, so at different times, at different ages, it has to be age appropriate, right? So when they're very little, they're not going to understand the intricacies of this physical aspect of sexual intercourse. But you talk to them and you tell them that there's something that's called a sperm, and there's something called an egg. The egg comes from the female, the sperm comes from the male, and when they come together, they form a baby which grows inside the mother's womb. Now, if they ask you any more questions after that, but how does it get in? And usually they don't. When they reach the age of 8, that is the time when they ask you how. Right? And if they're asking you, how does that get in? Then it is very important to talk to them about the biology of the reproductive organs. Because when they understand the biology of the reproductive organ, then they will understand how the male is so made that he has what is called a penis, which acts as a delivery tube. And what does that delivery tube do? Its main, what do you call that? Job is to deliver that sperm to the female, and the female has what is called a vagina, and the penis has to go inside the vagina in order to deliver it. So you're not going into the whole detail of the emotional part of it and all yet, because please remember, till the age of 10, the hormones haven't kicked in yet. So they're just looking for facts, and they're very logical at that point of time. After that, at 10 and 11, you explain to them the physiology of the human anatomy and how things work, right? And then you talk to them also, apart from the physical aspect, you also talk to them about the emotional aspect, because they're ready. Please don't think that a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old is too young to understand about the whole act of sexual intercourse. Yeah.
So Chitra, please go ahead. You can ask your question.
Hi, I'm a mother of 2 sons.
Yeah.
So my husband is a little not comfortable with asking questions, but I'm open to it and I've kept it as such. So how would you advise, guide us in that?
Well, actually, it is ideal when both parents are on the same page, because otherwise kids can read, as I said, they read body language, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what their relationship with you is, but if you are open to talking about it, you can always tell them that, please, you all can come and ask me anything, because, I'm there to teach you, and I'll teach you as much as I know. And if I don't know what you are asking, then maybe we can look at it together and
yeah.
Question, Dhana, you had a question. Go ahead. Dhana Lakshmi? No? And Divya, I'm also asking, you also had a question. Okay.
Let me see that.
Yeah. Sanjana has a question. No, she had raised her hand, but I think I'm asking her to unmute. Go ahead, Sanjana.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the information shared. I just wanted to know, most of the times when we have these open conversations, sometimes children actually get very embarrassed and say, hey, I don't want to know further, or they probably go to the other extent of, assuming that when we see it in movies or with regard to somebody else, it's fine. But when our parents do it, it's not good. So they hate when parents come together or just hold hands, are comforting each other. Those kind of things is something that I have known of my friends' children as well.
Okay, okay, and they've never seen you doing this since they were little.
So this has not really happened with my child, but then I've
Okay.
heard my friends actually, talking and understanding how did we deal with it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
my
Because
sister did go through this, where for many years the child did not allow them to even sleep in the same bedroom.
yeah, so there are different reasons why this could happen. One is also because they've never seen any intimacy between parents. Yeah, and
Mm.
maybe they've seen something on TV, or what they have watched is something that has been violent, and they're scared, right? So this is the way in which they possibly react. Um, the thing is, when you make something habitual when they're really young, that's why we say have conversations or model behaviors when kids are really young, then they're more accepting of it, rather than when the teenager is 14 years old and you say, now I want to have a chat with you, they will be able to teach you more at that point of time than you can teach them. Yeah, so I think it
Yeah.
all stems from the fact that you need to talk, or you need to model things for them when they're young. And if they're not, and if even if they, if you haven't done that since they were young, you can have a chat with them. I mean, you can ask them, process it, ask them why are you thinking that way? Is that something that bothers you? Process it with them. I think processing it with them is very important.
Next question we take from Madhu, and sorry because we are out of time. This will be the last one. Go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Sohana. It was lovely, a lovely session, and the information has been so good. I have a question. As in, I have twins, and they are teenage boys. They are already
Yeah,
14 and a half.
yeah.
Now the question is, though I have been an open-minded person, and we haven't as such addressed any such questions from our kids from the beginning about sexuality or sex or anything. And
Right, right.
uh, part of their syllabus, they have learned quite a lot in school itself.
Mhm.
They study in an international school, so it was quite there in the sixth, seventh standard itself when they were in the school.
Right, right.
So we are quite there. But now, since after hearing your, all that you had to say, I would like to begin a session and have a
Open
chat
up.
with my boys. Yeah, just to know how well they've understood what, not knowing things. So how do I go about that? How do I start up a conversation? Do I involve the father to start it, or do I start it on my own? How do I do it? I mean, how do I start up the conversation with these?
Well, if your husband is very open to doing it, also do it together. You don't have to only do it, on your own.
Okay.
So that is one thing. Secondly, I mean, you don't have, a lot of times kids are already embarrassed, right? If they haven't had this conversation openly, or you haven't discussed it before. So
Yeah.
maybe pick up a topical movie that talks about either abuse, or talks about consent or boundaries, etc. And there are a lot of them on in Bollywood. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So pick up a movie like that, watch it together, and then just discuss behaviors, and that will lead to other conversations, and that may lead.
Fine.
Do you guys know that gosh, she got pregnant, but I don't think she used any protection, and uh, you guys know, right, that it's dangerous not to use protection, also from not only from the this of pregnancy, but also from the fact that she could have got a sexually transmitted disease. So then you're bringing that topic in also, and you kind of try to understand from them how much they know about that. And you can say how many diseases you know, and ask them whether they know of any more. So these topics, they can kind of go one into the other. But that's what I said, use teachable moments to do that.
Well, thank you. I know we have a lot of questions and we apologize if we've not been able to get to yours, but excellent talk. I think, Fiona, a couple of people are asking and we will post it back for books. I think the ones that you've mentioned are not available on Amazon. So
Oh, okay. This one's not available on Amazon. It's a fabulous book. Um, but I will post more pictures. I mean, more books. Um, but Dan Pantaki's book on for sexuality, it's not only for educators, it's for every parent. I can't tell you how beautiful it is and how beautifully they have spoken about both the physical part of it as well as the emotional part of it. So get yourself that book. It's selling with the FPA also. So but the websites are just fantastic. So even if you don't have a book, do have a look at the websites. Sex Explained is very good also. Positive sex positive families is also very good.
and I think a lot of people want your book, the one that you read.
I know my husband keeps telling me that I need to do. My son keeps telling me that I need to start writing a book, but well, let's see. Maybe that's another thing that I will take on for maybe next year.
Fantastic. So before we end the evening, any last tips that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, actually, just a takeaway: change your attitude. Okay, you have to do that. Change your attitude because it's all for the better. Uh, and listen to your child or to the young kid that you're imparting any information to, because you want to create that safe platform, non-judgmental platform that will make them come to you and discuss things with you so openly, right? And for those parents who have not really spoken to their kids since they were really young, it's not too late. Just tell your kids, I'm sorry, I messed up. I didn't think this was so important that I should do it, and I thought somebody else would do it, but it didn't occur to me that it's actually my job, and I needed to sit down with you guys and do this. So I'm really sorry, and can we just start from now and at least try and talk about some topics that would be that you would like to come and ask any question. I'm open to answer your questions, but again, remember your body language. It has to be non-judgmental.
And I think somebody would like to see the cover of that book that you showed again.
Oh, okay, I think it's going to be in the inverse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And I think your daughter has also joined, so thank her also. So we can see how open, because I think she replied to a comment. But I thank you, Fiona, for this absolutely amazing session. At least for me, it gives me a lot more comfort. I like the idea about using the teachable moments. I think
Yes.
there are lots of books out there, there are lots of
Mm-hmm.
websites. I think the very, very simple stuff of using just the correct names. I think that
Yes.
if we just start with that, that might just normalize that for us.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's just been a pleasure to thank you for inviting me and having these discussions, because I think these are so important that we have more of these discussions. I know that Sipping Thoughts have had some discussions on this before, but thank you, because a lot more people now, will log on, even if it is on YouTube,
And we're
right?
going to
It's on
do one
YouTube.
with YouTube on Facebook, and we're going to do
Yes.
one in Hindi now with you. Now that I know you know Hindi.
God help anybody who's watching.
With that, I wish you all a good night, and thank you all for joining us here on Sipping Thoughts today.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.